This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, JZ Microphones, Spectra 1964, Atom Audio, and Isotope. You're hearing my voice right now on a JZ pop filter and BB29 microphone through the Spectra 1964 STX100D mic pre and Isotope RX and Ozone, all recorded safely onto an OWC SSD. So get ready to rock.
You're looking for some secret sauce to success. I don't have it for sure. I just have ambition, a reasonable, objective view on the potential for failure, and embracing all of that. Follow it if it's, you're passionate about it. Like, you never know what little opportunity or one little thing that you do along the way might serve something else in the future. Say yes to everything unless it's, horribly terrible.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. No matter where you like to rock in the galaxy, the OWC Envoy Pro Electron lets you record with confidence over USB-C with up to more than a gigabyte per second real-world performance. Transfer tracks in seconds and take your sessions with you wherever you go. Built for reliability, the OWC Envoy Pro Electron is waterproof, dustproof, and crush-proof. Find the new OWC Envoy Pro Electron and all your storage needs at macsales.com/rockstars. If you're ready to discover the secrets to making your mixes sound great no matter what your studio situation, then check out my free mixing course, mixmasterbundle.com, where I show you how to get great sounding mixes in your studio using simple techniques and free plugins. And when you're ready for more advanced studio skills, then check out recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy, where you can learn from Grammy-winning teachers to help you record, edit, mix, and master your best record ever. Use the code Rockstar right now at checkout for 10% off any course for a limited time. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Pierre De Reider. Pierre spends his time between making records as a commercial studio owner at 64 Sound and its affiliated production room facilities, inhabiting the occasional role as a solo artist or player in various projects, running his indie record label, Little Record Company, and managing all things for the band Rilo, Kiley, a band for which he is both a founding member as well as now having its two latest releases on his label. Very cool. In recording things, Pierre has worked with the likes of Mavis Staples, She and Him, M. Ward, Sia, Tim Heidecker from Tim and Eric, Emitt Rhodes, Vampire Weekend, Ben Gibbard, Julian Casablancas, Bright Eyes, and much of his own and various bands. At his studio, 64 Sound and its incarnations, he's hosted artists such as X, Devendra Banhart, My Morning Jacket, Amanda Palmer, Michael Kiwanuka, Tokyo Police Club, Bat for Lashes, Ty Segall, St. Vincent and Sleater-Kinney, Starcrawler, Warpaint, and many other artists. Because of its very extensive collection of vintage recording gear, microphones, and instruments, a lifelong collection of Pierre and his studio partners Curt Anderson and Kingsize Soundlabs, as well as multiple analog tape formats and/or digital, 64 Sound has become a highly sought-out recording destination for bands and songwriters from around the country and around the world who come to play and write on more than 50 vintage guitars, 40 vintage keyboards, synths and organs, multiple pianos and drums, and effects and doodads galore. Thank you so much to Rob Schnaff for making our introduction. Rob, you rock. We need to have you back on the podcast too. I'm excited to talk to you, Pierre, about your doodads. Please welcome Pierre De Reider to Recording Studio Rockstars. Pierre, are you ready to rock, dude?
Oh, yeah.
Well, welcome to the show. So we should preface this probably by saying that this is not our first introduction, technically, Well,
That's right.
Unless you didn't come into the studio, but if we rewind way back to 2005, you guys came in as Rilo Kiley to my studio at Bonnaroo, the very first year that I did the Hay Bale studio.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. And I'm trying to recall the details.
I know, I'm just putting you on the spot. What, you don't remember me, dude?
Yeah. No, man. It was awesome. Remember? And then we went and got, I don't know.
It was in a trailer.
But yeah, it was a trailer.
You might remember that I had a Casio SK1 there for you guys to use.
I love Casio SK. We have two.
I have two, but I think I lost one.
They can be temperamental, so hence the two. But yeah, they're amazing.
Now, do you use them? Is it battery or do you go adapter for wall wart?
Battery, just because they float around. I mean, so often that's the little keyboard I'll give to a vocalist if they're sitting by their mic and just trying to figure out melodies and stuff.
It is exactly what I do. If I have it. Now I can't find it and the batteries are dead. So now I just give them an iPhone with the GarageBand piano pulled up.
Right.
But that is such a brilliant trick because people are very easily lose track of what the hell they were just about to sing, don't they?
Yeah. And or they just want to figure some shit out. But yeah, for sure. It's awesome. Plus you get the human voice thing in there and it's amazing. With the delays and depending on where you are on the scale, they're slow.
How often do you break out the little synth, the DIY, make your own synth version in there and like sculpt a sound?
Occasionally, yeah. It's usually like with a stupid like, and then that goes up to scale.
Yeah.
Layer in some like harmonies and do just whatever. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more in your own words about, who you are and where you come from.
Well, I let's see. Who am I?
And I don't think we said, but 64 Sound, you're in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So we're in LA. I live in LA. Everything I do these days is around here. 64 Sound is the commercial studio that I operate not far from where I live, and before that, I had a different location for it. So I've been in the commercial studio game for since 2009, I say, first spot, and I mean, I guess that most of what I do now is make records that I do at the studio and hire that as a commercial studio. I have partners, as you mentioned, with another local studio, Kingsize Soundlabs, with Dave Trumpio, and then my buddy Curt Anderson, and then we have some other production rooms and stuff where we hire out rooms for people to set up their own thing.
So now, have you spent a lot of time over at Kingsize with Dave before that?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember working with the Spinto Band?
I did not work with the Spinto Band. I think do you know like Celso Estrada? I think he worked on that with Dave.
Okay, yeah. Those were guys I did. Nice and Nicely Done was the record that I produced with Robin Eaton with the Spinto Band. And then the second one, Moonwink, they went in to go work with Dave.
Yeah. I remember that, but I wasn't really around for that. Maybe, I wasn't. I didn't really work at I just brought some projects there. Like I did my own record there with Dave before I had a studio, and then I brought records there before I had a studio. And then sometimes when my location was booked, I'll use that, and then we partnered up, and now we kind of go between. But yeah, I work there occasionally still.
Right on. I guess I'm just looking for more ways for you and I to be connected. It's like, come on, Lidge, is this podcast interview not enough in itself?
You remember that jacuzzi in Palm Springs?
Okay, dig it. So tell us about 64 Sound. Now, if I look at the website, I'm looking at a really cool looking console.
Yeah, well, it's an MCI 428B.
Oh, and, sweet.
Yeah, it's great. It's really sonically amazing. Put all the necessary effort into keeping it maintained and new caps and adjusting the temperamental Molex connectors. But other than that, it's really, really a great sounding console. So
does anybody ever put in old caps?
I did when we recapped it. I left 4 channels, vintage, and they definitely sounded, colorful in a weird and not as great way, but definitely was interesting for a while. But then we eventually capped over those.
There you go, cap over it.
Yeah, put a cap on it.
Well, so then you also have what looks like a ATR 102 sitting next to it.
Yeah, it's actually an ATR 104. So it has we have 4-track head, and two track heads, 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. So yeah.
So it's too bad.
What?
It's too bad. Better. That was my Spinal Tap version of
that brought me right over to England. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well then, and it's a nice, I dig the kind of vintage vibe too, even just like the color of the carpet in the photo and the old leather covered chairs and stuff like that. And the wood paneling, looks like you got wood paneling on the walls.
Yeah. So the studio was built like that in 75, 76, ish. So I came across it. It had been a studio up until I got it, but it was kind of defunct as a commercial studio by the mid 80s. So that's all the real McCoy. So I just kind of restored it. I put in those like new carpets to kind of match the vibe of the decaying old shag carpet that was there, and like new floors and finished some rooms, and then, brought in all our stuff. But that console was there. The 3M M79 tape machine was there. It's still, and there's 2 other things. There's an old Lowry organ that was there and an upright.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Lowrys are great. I have a symphonic holiday in my studio.
Ah, yeah.
Fun. You just hope that they never break down, because good luck fixing them,
Yeah. Is that one all tube as well?
No. Ours is it's all solid state, and it's like way too many buttons and switches and knobs and sliders. But it has a built-in Leslie. So if you use the flutes, it has a spinning speaker down in the lower part that will kind of kick in. Yeah. Plus a chorus effect.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
This one's all tube. So like every single note is made by, a tube. So you can get some crunches. You got to open up the back where you see the tube, and yeah.
Nice. Well, I feel like I cut you off and you were giving us your background story too. Tell us about, starting out in Rilo, Kiley, and give us the fast version of 2005-ish to now, and having 64 Sound and Little Record Company.
Okay. Well, Rilo, Kiley is a band that me and my best bud from San Diego, Blake, formed with Jenny, because Blake and I are both from San Diego, and he moved to LA, and he and Jenny met up, and they started playing music together and played coffee shops and all sorts of cool seed planting stuff for a prospective band. And I moved up, or I just come up, and we'd end up playing together and record stuff on our 8-track cassette Tascam 688. And then eventually, after I moved up and Blake and I got a place, and we eventually formed the band that was to be formed. And that was 97 ish. Yeah. And then we did all those things.
You guys had quite a lot of success with that band.
Yeah, I suppose. We definitely were a working class band. We went out there and did it, just loops and loops and loops around the country and eventually everywhere else. And we just did it. We Nike'd it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know how successful we were, but we were successful in the sense that we kept doing it, and we really put in the work. And every time we go around, we get a little bit more. And it was, it's a steady, slow and steady kind of maybe earned success because of that, perhaps. But no crazy big. Well, sorry, I cut you off.
No. I'm not trying to interrupt. It's just that from the perspective of like somebody like me out there, I just the song so Portions for Foxes, and you sent us a link to that, so we've got actually a video of that, Rockstars, in the playlist. Which, reminder, make sure to check out Pierre's discography, which we've got a link to over at Spotify, and then also a great YouTube playlist of many of the songs and recordings and videos you've made over the years. But like that song, or that album was just super catchy. And I mean, that was what was on the airwaves over here when you guys were coming and playing Bonnaroo. And so, you succeeded in inspiring the shit out of me and lots of other people. So well done.
Well, that's rad. Yes, hooray.
And then, then when did you start 64 Sound again? What was the year? Was that 2011 or something like that?
Yeah, well, 2009 was the first time I got the opportunity to partner in with my friend Kenny Woods at a studio up in North Hollywood, just part of LA. And that was my first foray into studioship. That was 2009. And so I was there till 2015, somewhere in the middle of that. Kenny split. He didn't want to do, or he had his own home studio and went focused on that. So I ended up inheriting the whole space. And then at that point, that's when I asked Dave and my friend Curt, kind of a trio people to partner in with me at that space. And then that space was really cool, a really great space. But a little hodgepodge. It was like at the back of a rehearsal hall that we systematically, like the other rooms were at first were just filled with metal bands and kind of crazy with this cool studio in the back. But over time, just systematically turned all those rooms into production rooms. So it became a really cool kind of just creative environment. But the whole building was on a shaky lease and lost it eventually in 2015, and then found the building that is 64 Sound soon after that. And took like a year to get in and make it a thing. And yeah.
Right on. So you went from kind of a shared space where there are multi-studios to now you're, the space is strictly 64 Sound.
Yeah, 64 Sound is a standalone studio, classic LA looking place, 2,400 square foot sort of building, just dedicated one studio with a B room that's never like hired independently of the current session. But then we have another building down the street, which is all those, to have that model like between me and Dave at Kingsize, have that model of a lot of production rooms and various different facilities. Have two other buildings that we have, and then Dave has a couple other. So all these spots with all these different rooms of various size rooms for people to come for long-term rentals. So people come in and stay for 2-3 years and set up their own studio. And yeah,
you're like a studio mogul.
Trying, don't ski anymore, so try to find mogul somewhere.
Nice, man. Way to bring in the true definition of mogul. I'm a skier. I get it.
I love skiing.
But when I want to sound cooler, I just say I like to hit the bumps trail.
Yes. Just hit the bumps.
Hit the bumps.
Very
cool.
Are you good at the bumps, by the way?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm as good as I can be for somebody who skis once every 20 years.
Right. Fair enough.
But tell us a little bit about, some of these spaces. The 64 Sound room, you've got the console in there. Do you like to try and have different spaces with, I guess if you just have a huge collection of gear, it's like that, it's this natural evolution towards like, well, let's put this gear in another studio. I feel that way sometimes. I feel like I could have a second studio.
Yeah. Everything goes into 64 Sound because it's the fun room. It's my working studio. All the other rooms are totally empty. Those are rented empty, so people bring that stuff. So all the fun stuff is at 64 Sound, and I just try to. It's a good justification to hoard all of this crazy stuff and to continue to collect. At least I can justify it to myself that way. But I just like to keep it like a Wonka chocolate factory of stuff for people, and I keep adding to it, and friends. I have lots of friends who park stuff there. Whatever. My friend Jason has his drum kit there and a guitar or two, and other friends have whatever. Just people park stuff there because it's a good place and it gets used, and it's used by a lot of great and creative people, so yes, there's a lot of stuff and it's all there. And
I feel like that's in the music industry and what we do. The future killer app is the one that sort of says, hey, I've got a big giant studio, so you can all store your musical instruments there. We just all get to use them whenever we want.
Right. Indeed.
It's one of the benefits of starting a studio is people begin to park things there. And some people don't even ask you before they park it there. You just discover that you now have a thing. You've now got a cool digital tuner that you didn't know you had before.
It's true. It's true. And thankfully, that's the flow is that way, knock on wood. I'm not missing a lot of stuff. I seem to acquire more than I ever miss.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been like, wow, I didn't know we had this, acrylite snare drum in a snare drum case. No idea where it even came from, but sounds great.
And then a year later you get, hey, did I, that session last year, leave an acrylite?
Even if that happened, I'd probably applaud that, because for me to remember that something's missing and remember who to even ask, did I loan you this something?
Right.
Which does raise a question. We might as well tackle this one. But
let's get into
the challenge of having a studio and having people go, hey, can I borrow such and such? Is it cool if I use this? I mean, I've had like sessions where, we finish and then the drummer texts me later, is like, dude, I got a gig coming up this weekend and we're totally need a tambourine. Hey, can I swing by and borrow? And I'm like, no.
Right. Yes. I selectively say yes. I mean, generally nothing leaves. It's just, I mean, the rule of thumb is that nothing kind of goes out, and it's if it's like a project I'm working with, yeah, it is. And I don't rent anything. I will loan, if someone's like, can I rent that? Like if it's a thing and it's a project, an extension of a project that's going somewhere else for something else, I won't rent it to you, but I'll let you borrow it for the session. It's fine. So.
Right. Well, and it's just a challenge that you run into is when you collect a studio. Because I think for somebody else, it looks like, oh, is it cool? If you're not using it or something, can I borrow it for a reasonable question? But the problem is when you have the studio, you just can't keep track of, it's like too much mental keeping track of things to try and remember who you may or may not have loaned something to. And then, if you loan it out today, you're going to need it for a session tomorrow.
Right. I guess that's a good point. I don't want to have like a paper trail spreadsheet of shit that I'm putting out. If I have like a mental ability to loan out one or two things, that's my limit.
Right. Yeah. And I've found that the easiest solution to that is to either blow off the text message that comes in or to say, yeah, I'm so sorry. We have a studio policy that we don't, it's just say studio policy. It takes it off your shoulders. With so many game-changing iZotope plugins to choose from, deciding which one to buy next could be a bit of a challenge. But did you know that now you can have all their plugins through iZotope's new affordable subscription bundle, Music Production Suite Pro, for only $19.99 per month? Get your Rockstar extended 30-day free trial subscription now at iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off any individual plugin purchase. Do you need to record direct stereo keyboards? Spectra 1964 now offers the Stereo BBDI2 with custom wound high-Z transformers for big headroom, virtually flat response, and a 15 dB input pad. The Spectra 1964 BBDI passive direct box is also perfect for recording deep bass that will make your mixes sound huge. Plug that into a C610 complementer, and as founder Bill Cheney points out, it'll move your pant leg. Get your sound moving at Spectra1964.com. Tell us about Little Record Company. You also have put together a label. That's a badass thing. What does it mean to put together a label? How hard is it? What are the benefits of creating a record label?
Well, I formed it just to put out my own record back in 2007, 8.
Nice.
Yeah, it was just that. It was just like, all right, I want to just do this on my own and DIY, and did all the recording. We a little bit with Dave, like I said, and a lot on my own, and whatever. Just wanted to have a label, and it was in the back of my mind that sure, now I'll have this infrastructure. I got a distributor, and you hire independent PR and radio and all that junk. It's like, all right, I know how to do this. And I tried to let it from there become just a means to put out bros records. Like any friend is like, you want to do it? Yeah. If they say to me, is there any chance we could do something? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. It's like completely, I don't put any money into anything. I just put my sweat and tears, and I don't really care. I came to be known as an administration label. I didn't know that it was such a thing, but like I just let the artist fund everything. I just take a tiny percentage for having the infrastructure in place, and I put in all the work of behind the scenes stuff, and just let people. At the time, it was still before, and I guess it's in some sense it still is, when it was harder to self-release something. So I just said, I have this infrastructure. I'll let you do it through me, and see what happens. Yeah.
And so at the time you started it, infrastructure was probably both important and somewhat elusive, right? Because you had to set up things to print physical copies and distribute them and things like that. Has that shifted for you as a label now with digital online releases? And if it has shifted, do you still retain, is there still like a momentum because you're a label that makes it a cool thing to interact with an artist directly?
I'm not. Let me see. Let me unpack that.
In other words,
I've always
like,
wanted to. Yeah,
in other words, now that we're in a world of like, DistroKid,
right,
go make an account and release it. It seems like it's a DIY thing, but there may be a lot of benefits to that momentum that you've created. In other words,
yeah. I mean, hopefully there's some cachet to it for whomever. I mean, I don't have a lot of releases, and I just work with a few people at this point. And yeah, it's still great to have my distribution partner, which is Red Eye, and they're fantastic. Right. And so if I need physical release, great. If it's just digital aggregating all that stuff, then it's fantastic. And I have a team over there, which is great. And then and so for the and for the Rilo Kiley stuff, we definitely do, vinyl and it's a physical, tangible thing, and it's still just need that distribution network to get into the various stores and all that stuff. So
totally.
So it's cool and fun, and yeah.
Has vinyl been sort of accelerating for you guys as it seems to be for the world at large?
Sure. I mean, the fact that it's now standard and ubiquitous again, it's great. It's definitely, it's still the vinyl production plants are still backed up, 3,000% and all that stuff, which is great. It's a great sign, and it continues to be. I'm glad it wasn't just a new fad again to get back into vinyl. But,
right.
Because we're not exclusively vinyl at my house at all, but we certainly play a lot of vinyl. So.
Right on. I'm still guilty of needing to set up my final system here. It's happening. I promise. It's coming. That's all I can say. It's coming. Nice. It's coming. Okay, cool. Any other stuff you want to talk about working with Curt Anderson and Kingsize and Dave Trumpio?
I mean,
you guys you did the studios, the multi-facility, and now you're sort of the individual one, but spread out all over the place. I don't know. I guess it's always fun to talk about like how cool it is when there's a lot of other creative people nearby that you get to interact with.
Yeah. I mean, we're all, I mean, the dynamic is like Dave and I are, like business partners. We have these endeavors together, and it's great. And we don't, this year, don't see a ton of each other. And we don't get to work on projects together. But we have, which is cool.
Right.
And it's just cool. Like, that's just a fun endeavor to have to operate these various locations and look to expand and maybe do more as, whatever, as horizons broaden. And Curt and I, everything at 64 Sound is really Curt and I's stuff. That's just that's basically our collection. Lifelong collections of stuff, guitars and outboard gear and mics, and and all that stuff. So Curt is he's like my playground partner of like filling the space with cool things, and his history. He was an engineer and a wiring guy. Predominantly a wiring guy. Like he wired Capitol, like rewired Capitol Records, and he worked at the Tonight Show, and he's like fantastic wiring guy. So obviously an invaluable partner to have at a studio, but he just loves collecting gear as I do, and so that's just shared, just like, again, hoarder collector mentality.
This is Curt Anderson.
Curt Anderson, yeah.
Cool. All right? So, what is some weird, cool new microphone or instrument that you're excited about there? I mean, new or old, whatever. Just recently new for you.
Yeah, I mean, I keep getting little weird microphones all the time. Like I have a huge EV collection, and I'm always finding those are like an awesome, affordable, like really cool aesthetic mic. You're probably familiar, but like the whole, 50s and 60s EVs kind of thing.
You got the RE10?
I don't have an RE10.
Ooh,
I have
look
an
at that.
RE11.
My first try, and I stumped you on it. I'm surprised,
I have an RE11 and a
RE15, 16.
Yep, and not a 16. I do have a 16. Do
you have an RE 2021?
I
just made that up.
I don't have that. I have so many in the sixes though. 630, 620,
635.
635, 4 635s, 666s. Yeah, rock. Those are awesome. Lots of 666s.
I think is the 666 the one that sort of is almost like a tabletop announcer's mic with a switch on it?
It is not. I mean, it's hard. It sort of looks like Flash Gordon's spaceship. Mic? It is the devil's mic.
I thought so.
But it's an awesome mic. I mean, it's all these things when you watch the Ken Burns History of Country Music, you see like every mic in my locker, which is what I love. And it's all these like random, like, oh my God, there's that thing. And they were notably the 666s were like the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. Like they're all those kind of mics.
Sweet.
But yeah, and like, I don't know, the question was, what are some new weird things? I don't know. I always get little things like that all the time. I just got this Grundig stereo dynamic little plastic thing. I don't even know when it's from, but it's just you twist and it's just a cool little mic.
It's fun when you have all these cool mics, and it's always a blast to discover what they can sound like. But I imagine it's also a challenge sometimes when you're thinking like, well, which one should I use? It's like plugins, right? If you have so many, do you have any ways to help you determine like what you want to use in your studio if you've got a lot of cool mic choices?
No, I mean, aside from just experience with them and like, oh, this would be cool for that. And there's things like, I don't know exactly what this would do in this position. So I try to, in just about any tracking session, at least drums are fun because you can throw so many mics up all over the place, and or guitars in a room mic. But just I always try and throw in some different mic that I haven't really used a lot of, or I haven't used in this particular application, and just throw it in, and it either comes up in the mix or it doesn't, or it ends up being this really amazing thing that I never discovered before. So it's just a lot of, I'll throw stuff in a lot of places to see what happens.
So now the EV635, if I recall, if memory serves, is the dynamic Omni mic.
Yes.
What have you discovered are some cool use cases for that? Have you sort of explored using an Omni to mic a guitar amp up close, for example? And have you discovered that there's different qualities about doing it like that are worth talking about?
Well, I don't use it a lot for guitar. The things that I have, but everything that I throw it up on, it's one of those mics that just, that's very pleasing no matter what. I use it a lot for horns. It's the only kind of other mic I go to for horns other than ribbons. And because it can be really it's so small and sleek and sneaky, it can get in like in a weird tight corner if there's a bunch of people or whatever.
Right.
And it's great on a Leslie. It's great. It's kind of great. It's just kind of great on. I've had it I've had it for vocals, for like backup singers, and there's a lot of it's just one of those mics. It's just
So
for all the applications.
Let's talk about the Leslie for a sec. I know in my world, typically we think Leslie, we go like, okay, we're going to need 2 mics for the top, 1 for the bottom. Is that true? Or do you find that there's other ways to record a Leslie and be creative and get it to sound really cool?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that is the typical thing. I think I find myself doing the 2 mics more often than not without the low mic, but definitely go in there. It just depends on what's going on. But, and those mics can range from the EVs to those 666. I can't say it. The devil's got my tongue. Those are really cool because they just have this kind of just this cool mid-range focus that's really cool for some stuff. But sometimes the Leslie, I go real hi-fi, and I have like a Neumann KM 184s on them, just really hi-fi, and it's just whatever, it sings in that reason. And sometimes just have a mono thing kind of far off, and that's interesting too. So there's no rules. I guess my rules of thumb are just the stereo guys, by and large.
Do you find that dynamic mics and mono things and things that are sort of sound a little further away tend to be really useful for productions where you're going to include quite a number of instruments, and you begin to realize sort of in your production engineering approach that not every sound is supposed to sound like it's up front as the star MVP of this song, but sometimes you just want things to just kind of sit back gently, with the sound. Like you don't need the highest high frequencies and the lowest low frequencies for every damn sound you record, right?
For sure. Absolutely. And that's like one of the greatest things about having all these various microphone palettes and compressor, and pre's and all that stuff, is they all do this thing and they sound different. And mics in particular, like you say, and such a thing for me. I was looking at some of like a common question. It's like what's like a big thing that's been helpful for you in your career, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
EQ and just making space in music.
Yeah.
Is such a big thing for me. It's like it's not, and you find microphones have their own space, and they create different things in the mix. And for sure, it doesn't need to be this full spectrum thing for every damn thing.
Atom Audio can provide all your monitor needs. Whether you are setting up a first-time home studio for recording music or podcasts, or a world-class studio for professional mixing and mastering, their unique accelerated ribbon tweeter design is famous for creating smooth, detailed imaging that let your speakers disappear into your music, allowing you to focus on the mix. Visit the Atom Audio YouTube channel for lots of cool free interviews, tutorials, masterclasses, and learn how to set up your studio monitor and control room. Just click the link in the show notes of this episode. The JZ Microphone Vintage Series are built by hand in Latvia and feature the patented Golden Drop capsule design for enhanced clarity that will give your recordings that classic vintage tone. Our friends at JZ Microphones have come up with a special offer only available to you, Recording Studio Rockstars listeners. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the V67, V47, or the new V12 microphone at jzmic.com. Talk a little bit more about making space. I mean, so what does it mean to use EQ to make space? How do we do some of those things? And you could be general, specific, doesn't matter. Just wind you up and go. Ready to go.
Yeah. Let's see. What can I talk about? Well, I guess I'd have to start with the low mids. Nice. That kind of 140 to 300 kind of zone. That's one of those crazy space hogs,
like
for me.
Who invented that zone?
Yeah.
Come on.
I don't know. It's incredibly needed, but it's just everything builds up in there.
Yeah.
And I carved that out of a lot of stuff, and a lot of mics will have carved that out of me for me. Hey, so it's good from the, but yeah, that's a good example of space making space is in that zone, and I reserve those frequencies for just the things that might need it in whatever given thing. But And the same thing with high frequencies, mids, pushing and detracting. God, as you know, or every listener knows, if you find like some offensive frequency that you notch out, it's just, could be like 2.2K, and it's the most ridiculously liberating thing to that track if you just tuck it out.
Sometimes I'm amazed that you can just do that to the entire mix, and you're like, wow,
for sure.
This whole thing sounds better when I just suck some of those upper mids out.
Yeah, don't be afraid to EQ the master, it's the same thing. Like an interesting analogy. Another thing that I do graphic design, do a lot of like record covers and all that kind of stuff.
Sweet.
So similarly, I'll work on just to put a photographic analogy to it. Similarly, I'll work on like a Photoshop doc that's like layers and layers and deep and all this stuff, and I fine tuning all this stuff and whatever. But then you flatten it and you just like adjust some visual things in that curve, and it's just everything you've done for like 4 weeks working on something just comes to life in just that last something. And that's like mastering too. Same sort of thing. But just in the mix, the same thing. Like every individual track is fantastic, but then you have a chance to just look at that in one objective, or listen to it in one objective palette, and adjust it with, EQ, compression, saturation. And that's where another layer of fun, just another layer of fun.
So you're using, you're mentioning Photoshop in the digital world. So obviously you're comfortable with digital visual tools. Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself using a lot of digital tools in the audio space too? Or are you using, primarily analog, or is it a mix of all these things?
It's definitely a mix. I love utilizing everything at my disposal. And thankfully, having such a great analog front end allows me to capture everything, whether, we do a lot of tape. So I print a lot of stuff to tape and then bring it in, do a lot of stuff not to tape, whatever. But just having a great front end, bringing it in, then yeah, I'm not afraid to definitely throw EQs on or compressors in the box. And utilize everything, Yeah.
How often do you pat yourself on the back for having a console in the recording stage of things? In other words, do you find that being able to send things in real time as you're getting the sound through the mics and then just print all of that at once is really fantastic?
Yeah, but I guess I don't really know. I don't pat myself on the back, but I do
You're the
think
first in 300 interviews. The first guest I've asked how they pat themselves on the back, by the way. That's a first.
I'm honored. It's just the way I'm used to doing it in general. I guess I've had the luxury of doing it that way for most of my recording stuff. Whatever. Like even back in home recordings, we always had like, we definitely went to just outboard pre's and interface and stuff. But I don't know. I guess at this point, I'm so used to just doing it that way and having that at my disposal wherever I work, at whether my studio or a different studio or a Kingsize or wherever. I'm used to it.
Well, so how do you do it? So you bring in mics off the floor. They come into the console. Do we think about the console in a split fashion where there's a recording end of it that then goes over to Pro Tools, and then the return from Pro Tools comes up on the same fader? Or do we think about it where it's like we're building this 2-mix on the console, but simultaneously sending it to Pro Tools and not hearing it yet? Or, maybe you can break that down for people a little bit.
Yeah, the way I like to do it. I've done it all the different ways. Like the way I prefer to do it, and it's a function of whatever studio you're at and what console you have. Like it has been fun in the past to be at a studio where, yes, I'm bringing back all the returns on the return section and mixing everything there. It's a pain in the ass though. I wouldn't want to do that all the time because the recallability and all that kind of stuff. So I like to, whether I'm going to mix the thing or not, I'm always building kind of the mix as I go. Just the way I like to do. I like to hear it like while it's recording. I'm sort of I'm bouncing everything. I'm building the song how I'd want to hear it. So by the time at the end of the day, the end of the couple hours, the end of the week, whatever it is, it's like we're ready to bounce a rough mix. that's probably going to be, 80% of the sound that it'll be after I finally mix it. If, again, if I'm mixing it.
Right. But so keep explaining, because like sometimes if you're not doing this yet or all the time, you're like, you get stuck on these little details. And so if you're building the mix all the time, is that building happening for you in the Pro Tools session, or is it happening somehow at the console that gets printed to Pro Tools where you don't need to hardly do anything to it in Pro Tools?
In Pro Tools. Yeah. Because I use the console as, basically channel strips, when I'm recording, or I'm bussing stuff, whatever. So they're all going to Pro Tools, and I'm setting up 90% of the time I'll be mixing in Pro Tools. So again, that's the hybrid thing that I like. Tons of color, analog front end, captured, got all the sounds, do all the adjustments in Pro Tools, and mix, do all my automation in Pro Tools, and either and then send master stuff out to outboard gear. So then again, Pro Tools is in the middle.
Right.
So just doing it all in the box. Like I'm just doing all the moves in there, and then my recording stuff, everything that's coming through the console is just for the recording stage, unless I mix on the console, which does happen sometimes, and that's super fun to do. So
the console is acting primarily like a whole series of mic pre's on the way into Pro Tools that has, EQ and character and maybe patched in compression or whatever. Are you also finding that you use some of the mix bussing on the console as part of that recording stage too? Is it like, do you ever do parallel, like you send over and get some extra distortion, or sending to the delay is really useful, or
totally
pre-mixing the drums?
Yep, totally. Yes. And a lot of, when I say the console is just kind of also, more often than not now, I use the console pre's for a lot of stuff, but I definitely have such an extensive assortment of choice, which is great, of outboard stuff. So I'll use a lot of outboard pre's on channels too, and it just depends. It depends on the flavor, just something different I want to try, and bring it back to the console just so the final fader is on the console, which sends to Pro Tools. But sometimes there's stuff that doesn't hit the console at all, and like it'll all go from pre directly to Pro Tools.
Yeah.
But it's anything and everything. Yeah, all of the above.
Well, it's one of those things that I think, I mentioned this, time to time on the console, on the podcast, not on the console, about the console, but on the podcast, is the fact that with digital recording, we sort of quietly lost a feature of recording without necessarily realizing that we lost it, which is, it's the idea of parallel stuff. So, and it's funny because I never really heard anybody talk about parallel processing until we were in the computer, and until there were all these YouTube channels always talking about it. This idea of parallel compression and everything. But ironically, we couldn't do it anymore in the recording stage, because you kind of need a console if you want to send the drums all over to a compressor and then include that in on its own track, or mix that back into it. You end up having to record things without the parallel processing, and then on playback you kind of get to add it again,
Right.
And it's ironic, it's funny, because I think it's a missed opportunity, and I think that all the musicians will play differently if they hear that kind of like excited sound at the recording stage and not have to wait for it on playback.
For sure. I totally agree. And again, that's partially, again, back to the mix as I go sort of thing, which I'm sure tons of people do. I don't know. Not unique, but I like that excitement of like feeling this whole song and like, instantly like have this vibe, as opposed to, we're just hearing the drums and the bass and everything's down and like just play to this and then visual, and that also comes from, I do get to work with a lot of live bands still, so it's a lot of people tracking simultaneously in the same room, or it's like, so that's great. And I encourage anybody who is maybe on the fence of doing that to do it. And I encourage anybody who is maybe on the fence of using the tape machine, let's just do it. I can put it here. And you can do fun parallel things with that too, even though it's time delayed, where you can be recording digital and the tape machine simultaneously, which I always do.
Yeah.
And in a through way, but also you can do it where you're coming off the repro head and bring it back into Pro Tools and having a simultaneous digital track and that track, all these fun things you can do. And I encourage it all.
I'm glad you brought that up. So that's one of the, I'm sort of sad to say that my tape machine has just moved out of the control room in my studio. But when I was using it a bunch, that was my favorite way to work, was to, record through the tape machine for a tracking with the band, rewind, play that into Pro Tools, once we had the takes we wanted. But then on the overdub stage, I had devised the system for splitting the sound coming into the tape machine so that we would record both into Pro Tools and bouncing it off the tape heads as we went. And I think this is maybe what you're talking about, where you get the feel of moving quickly in Pro Tools to capture things, but you're actually on a muted track, you're recording everything off the tape as well, right, so that you can unmute that, and now it sounds like the whole thing was always on tape.
Totally, yeah. And you can do that in small batches. You can do it just the whole thing, and you bring it back in. You can mix the two, the digital and the tape, depending, and you can just time align it.
Yeah, that's interesting. How often do you do that? Do you mix the digital and the tape?
Well, I guess often, because a lot of stuff is tracked to tape, and then we either fill up the tape and bring it in, or just we're done with live tracking, let's bring it to Pro Tools. All right, we got to add some shit. We're not going to go back to tape, so we're just going to do the rest of our overdubs in digital. So there's a lot of that.
Mix and match in that way. But I guess I thought maybe you meant that if you had a vocal that was both recorded into digital and onto tape, you'd sort of blend those with some phasing or something.
Yeah, that specifically I have done, I think, but I don't do. But that's fun.
It would be a cool way to do that is to pan them. Just put one on one side, one on the other, and you get like a widening stereo effect just because of the anomalies of the tape machine.
Totally.
Or better yet, print it twice off the tape machine and then pan both those so that they just kind of shift a little bit in real time.
Yeah, and just go to different spots on the tape where it's going to be slightly out of sync and print it again and all that kind of fun stuff.
The STX-100D from the Spectra 1964 Custom Shop is the big brother to the now famous STX-100, a fully discrete mic pre with dual transformer-isolated Spectra 101 amplifiers. The STX-100D is exactly the same original circuit found in Stax, Ardent, Advision, A&M, and Record Plant recording consoles. The sonic performance is identical. Best of all, it will plug into a single space of your standard 500 lunchbox. And if you want to add the sound of the famous Spectra C610 complementer, then check out the new STX600 modules, combining the STX100 mic pre and C610 into a single 500 module. Now you can get the same incredible sound in your studio that worked for famous producers like Tom Dowd with the STX mic pre's BBDI and complementers. Go to Spectra1964.com or call 801-797-0642. I love using iZotope plugins for my music and podcast productions. In fact, you're hearing Ozone and RX on my voice in this podcast episode. And now you can get access to all the iZotope plugins through the new subscription bundle. For only $19.99 per month, Music Production Suite Pro is designed for the serious recording, mixing, and mastering engineer, putting the finishing touches on music, film, and podcasts with fully pro versions of Ozone, RX, Neutron, Nectar, Neoverb, Tonal Balance Control, Visual Mixer, and more, including free plugin updates. And just for you rock stars, get an extended 30-day free trial subscription at iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off any individual plugin purchase. Coupon not valid for subscription. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Pierre De Reider, joining us from 64 Sound and Little Record Company in Los Angeles. Pierre, are you ready to jam or continue rocking, or one of the two?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, sweet. Share a story of working with Mavis Staples. Is that somebody that you've had the pleasure to work with?
Yeah, I did. I got to do a record with her, Living on a High Note, with my friend, and I was engineering, and my friend M. Ward was producing. And yeah, so that was super fun. She's fantastic. Her whole band is amazing, and yeah, it's great experience. I don't know what's a story. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what was she like in the studio?
She's just super bubbly and happy, and always positive, and always ready to go, and do whatever, and just to use the words consummate professional would be very apt. And then just everything she does sounds fantastic. It's all the things you would think. She's fantastic interpersonal person and amazing.
I like
singer
interpersonal people.
Interpersonal people.
Yeah.
And not a good band name.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm sitting here wanting to Google the word consummate and like, what is isn't that like what you make soup from?
Yeah, right. There's something. There's compote, which was a jam, and then there's you consume. And even in me saying that word, I wasn't sure if I was saying it correctly. But I think it's consummate. Yeah, right.
I'm very lucky. I have a girlfriend with an incredible vocabulary now, so I just refer to her when in doubt. I just turn to her and ask her what it means. Make sure I'm using it right.
Right. Is she there to approve or deny right now?
Approve or deny. Okay, cool. Mavis Staples, that's great. What do you remember about her singing, though? I mean, she's got a pretty unique and magnificent singing voice. Did you have to make special choices about the vocal microphone or any of that kind of stuff?
I just did in advance. I used for the whole session, I used a 47 and a 44 together, simultaneous, to 2 tracks of tape.
Which do you remember being struck by the most?
I mean, I definitely blend those two, and depending on the song, and just depending on the performance and where the register was, you favor one more over the other. And yeah,
that's fascinating. That's a story I first heard from my friend Robin Eaton, who went out to go do a record in LA with Jill Sobule, and it was Don was producing, and he had, like Robin said, that he had chosen to have a U67 and an SM7 going the whole time, and then they could just kind of either use one or the other or blend them together. So that's cool to hear that you actually can just blend the 2 mics like that.
Yeah.
What are the challenges to doing that the right way? And can you kind of mess that up if you set it up wrong?
Oh, yeah, if you set it up out of phase. Yeah, you just got to make sure the capsule and the ribbon are aligned, and you're good to go. And that's easy to check. And yeah. And typically, in that situation, I put a little compression on the whatever the large diaphragm is. In that case, a 47, and I leave the ribbon uncompressed, and that also allows a different kind of blend where one's a little compressed and one's got a little more dynamics to it. So
I love the sound of an RCA 44 or an AEA 44 on vocals. I don't have one, but I've had one in the studio before, and I did some singing on it, and I was struck how the way it picks up the low end and the chest in a voice can kind of make you go like, wow, I sound like Frank Sinatra. This is pretty cool, It's pretty remarkable what that does.
Crosby, yeah. It's incredible. Yeah, they're so smooth and so full ranged, actually, too, but they have this inherent warmth and smoothness that's just amazing. Yeah. Same with the 77 too.
Yeah. I got to get one.
Yeah.
You want to send me yours? You got it. Can I borrow yours? You guys aren't using it in the studio, right?
The studio, everyone just gets a party favor when they leave, so just take whatever you want. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, cool. So let's see some of the other artists that you've worked with or that have been in the studio. I just grabbed from the list there. Devendra Banhart, My Morning Jacket, Tokyo Police Club, Bat for Lashes. Any stories around any of those sessions that you remember? Did you work on the Warpaint session?
I didn't. So again, like a lot of the time, more often, I'm renting the space as a commercial space, and I have a great little, just small set of fantastic engineers and assistants and stuff. Shout out to Tyler Carmen.
Shout out.
And
Tyler. Sorry, we haven't met
yeah,
yet.
right. So I did not do that session.
Okay.
But I I like always show up as like studio owner guy with a handshake and not so much handshakes right now, but a smile. Well, not so much smiles right now because there's a mask. Just a hello at the top of the session and stop in, make sure there's snacks and toilet paper and all that kind of stuff throughout.
Right on. All right. Well, let me pivot to some sessions that I think you may have been directly involved in. She and Him.
Yep.
Tell us about those guys. Who are She and Him? There's some great vocals, great vocal stacking going on. And just overall, it's kind of like revisiting the Beach Boys.
So interesting you say that. I can't say any more on that, but
oh my goodness, you have to now. You're under. We're we're pointing a podcast gun at your head.
Right.
Not really.
I feel the ominous barrel.
No, we're pointing a 666, an EV666 in your direction.
They all sound like this sometimes.
There you go.
Well, She and Him is M Ward and Zoe Deschanel, and yeah, it's them. When we're making a record, it's usually just the three of us in the studio, and then various players come through for different things, or I'll end up being like the weird auxiliary drummer or something that just needs to happen during a thing. But there's all sorts of fantastic players that come through. Like we've done a couple records with Jim Keltner and just various people.
And of course, Zoe's singing voice, I think I probably know from Elf.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know which predates which, but
yeah, I don't know when that movie is, right? Or early 2000s? I don't know.
Just one of the greatest movies ever made with Will Ferrell. So well done, Zoe. But very cool. So tell us about what you guys are doing. And, you guys are, it seems like you're distinctly going for something that has a character and a quality to it. Like you are breaking out the EVs and the ribbon mics and, the old, are you guys using old chamber reverbs and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, when I generally don't mix those records. I just generally do all the front end, but I always record usually always with a real plate. Usually it's a plate, and I'll print that, and whether that gets used in the final mix, when the few songs I mix, it always gets in there.
To pre-delay or not to pre-delay?
Usually not. Usually not. You can always, but sometimes.
And okay, if you're tracking with it, would you pre-delay it with a plugin going straight into Pro Tools, or would you actually do like the old, would you break out the ATR 104 and bounce it off tape on your way in?
Go through the Cooper Time Cube. Get the slightest bit of pre-delay. Yeah.
You got one of those?
Yeah. With only one side working, because those things blow. I got to get the other side fixed. But
have you ever built one? Have you ever done the old no garden tube thing?
I have not, but
I just said garden tube. There's no such thing as a garden tube.
Went down to Home Depot and got myself a garden tube. No, I haven't built it. Haven't rebuilt this one that needs a little bit of rebuilding. But generally, I don't do the pre-delay on the plate. So, but sometimes I do, and when I do, it would be with just like a little time delay on the in Pro Tools on the return.
Why would for the rock stars? Why would you choose a pre-delay on a plate reverb? What's the point?
I mean, just that little bit of clarity, and that just whatever. I don't know what is that when you get that hint, you get the hint of clarity, and then it's the swell of the verb comes after, and it's just varying degrees depending on how much pre-delay you have. When I use a plug-in, and I'm not afraid to use a plug-in plate or whatever, I'll put some pre-delay on there. I just strangely don't use a pre-delay too much when I'm using a real plate. So,
well, it just takes a little more effort to set up, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we're all lazy by nature. Come on, let's admit.
And it just sounds so damn good, just as is.
Yeah.
But when I do put a delay on after the fact on that return channel, it can be totally fun. It's like, oh my god, that's awesome. So you can do anything at any point. So,
well, don't worry, Rockstars, we're going to break it down into more detail than just that, than anything at any point. But
yeah, let me know if you want me to. I'll delve deeper into any of these things.
Yeah.
It's just super fun to talk about.
No,
I feel like I'm in, I don't know how deep or
go deep.
Stupidly
we like
nerdy
deep.
yet.
We like deep and stupid nerdy for sure.
So
this one's all about it.
Dig in if you want to on anything. Like even it's like where do you set the input on that?
This is not the recording studio Rockstars audience. The Rockstars are not the general record listening public. We're the geeks who love going into the studio and want to know exactly how to hook things up, make things sound a certain way. You talked about using
get this far in and still listening.
And to get this far in and still listening. You talked about using plug-in plates sometimes. What are some of your favorite go-tos for that if you're going to do that?
Historically, it's been Altiverb, and have some but I also really love, and seems to be more, again, to use the word ubiquitous, like 2 times in one hour and a half, is the Soundtoys.
That's a really consummate word.
Yeah. As words go. So I find those Altiverb to be, and I would do a thing kind of in the studio I go that had a plate. I'd run them simultaneous just to compare and kind of tweak my little Altiverb settings to like get it closer to this plate that I'm hearing. So I'd kind of fine tune a couple of my own plug-in settings to get closer to whatever real plate I was in, whatever. So anyway, I like that about Altiverb, but just as a slap on, ready to go, super easy and super available, cheap, afford. I won't say cheap because that's a terrible word to apply to anything, but an affordable plugin is that, and fantastic sounding is the little plate, the Soundtoys.
Yeah, so I like that one a lot.
So yeah, and that's transportable. Kind of seems to be the same as Altiverb in any professional studio. But if you're just a home user, Altiverb's a little pricier.
So tell us more about doing the she and him stuff. So you guys are recording with plate reverbs.
Yeah.
What else?
We typically do everything to tape. They are both Matt and Zoe are big fans of just classic sounds and tape and stuff. And Matt M. Ward, everything I've done with him over the years is always to tape, and he's got such a rad old timey vibe. And I don't know, whatever. We use we typically always track to tape, but are not afraid to then again use some overdubs and Pro Tools as needed, particularly when we get into a bunch of vocals with Zoe, which is super fun.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys do some cool layering, right?
Yeah, it's just fun. We just stack, and she's great at coming up with harmonies, and we just go through hours of just creating these lush.
Let's talk about that for just a sec. Let's break that down. So when you're in the process of stacking with Zoe, what have you learned about what she needs to hear in the headphones? Is it important to have both headphones on, take one off? Do you need to not hear the previous part to be able to put in the double for the new part? What kind of lessons have you learned about that?
Well, with her, it's really easy. With her, it's very easy. We just keep it going. She seems to like to hear everything that's come before. And just occasionally when we need to focus on something, I'll mute some stuff or whatever. Or it's like, okay, I can't get a good line. Let's just mute the lead and whatever. And then whatever, we'll just customize. But for the most part, it's just like stacking and she creates this, lush wall of sound, dare I say, to her own voice, which I think is rad and whatever. Kind of the way I do it too when I do my own stupid stuff. I like to hear kind of what it's building all at once. And I hear stories of Brian Wilson, as you bring up, who kind of, I don't know. I have no idea. I've never worked with him, whatever. But I've heard stories of him coming into studios and just only wanting to hear his current vocal, nothing else, and doing it multiple times, doing another harmony, only hear that harmony, and people not knowing what's going to happen. Then all of a sudden you turn them all on and it's this fantastic Beach Boys
That's
thing.
cool.
But again, that's anecdotal, secondhand knowledge.
Yeah, but my guess is that he's there's something else in there that is a pitch reference.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think
bass or some instrument that
I didn't mean to say he was a cappella, but I think vocally like he's singular on he doesn't hear any of other vocals. He'll hear the music.
Yeah, well, because what happens sometimes when you do hear the other vocals, people tend to, I think we all do this. I don't know. You should talk about, your own process and other people's, but sometimes people begin to doubt whether their pitch is right. And then you can hear the searching, the moving around to find the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends up sounding like a bad layer. How do you like to do it? I mean, I find that if I'm doing it, it's almost like the secret is to learn how to trust the way my body feels and don't even listen with my ears for the pitch anymore. I don't know if that sounds nutty, but it's like it becomes a physical reference.
I agree. I mean, I would, that makes sense to me. I mean, it's kind of a mix, like, cause sometimes you really can't hear, you're like in this swamp of other vocals. You really don't know. It's like, was that good? And then there's this sort of feeling mixed with a hint of hearing that confirms it or denies it. Sometimes it is awful.
How much layering do you do yourself? So we can pivot to this too. You've been making your own records. The Way It Was. Is that the title of the album or is that one of the songs?
Yeah, both. It was a song. It was I think The Way That It Was the title of the record. The song was That's the Way That It Was. Weird.
So tell us about that process. I mean, how have you been putting out your own records for a long, long time? I mean, obviously you've been part of the band and stuff like that, but is this sort of new for you to put out your own solo album? Or is it old hat? And, what do you enjoy about it?
Yeah, I mean, I've only put out one full-length solo album and some other like little singles and stuff. And it's been a while and then, the grand irony of having your own studios, of course, is you work much less on your own shit.
Right.
But yeah. And, that it's fun, like with some of my other friends doing their own solo records or whatever. It was fun and amazing, to get to the point, and I kind of just crescendoed at that. That was like the culmination of, ideas for a number of years all piled into one record that I finally finished at some point. It's certainly cathartic and all the stuff. What was the question?
Yeah, just what was it like to put out your own record? So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, again,
sometimes it takes years to collect all the things and put it together. I'm sort of in the process of putting out a 5-song record very slowly myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, it did finally make me do that. All right, because like you, I'm not sure exactly, but like I had all these things and songs, like I'll put out records someday or whatever. But there's definitely a point where I'm like, all right, I'm doing this. Like I'm going to track some stuff. I'm going to get some friends. We're all going to play. We're going to I finally at some point said, I'm going to make a record, which was cool. And just to make that decision and be resolute about it was fun and rad. And it also was the catalyst to starting the label, as I said. And so a lot of good stuff came about from doing it, just personally, it was just personally a good experience and a good thing to have achieved.
Yeah. And I like hearing the idea of getting your friends together. I mean, I think so often we think about doing our own record as having to be this lonely solo endeavor. And it's like, it totally doesn't. There's no reason that our own record can't look just like the records that we do for other people, where there's a whole group, a band brought in and even a producer and an engineer hired. If we've got the money for it. If we don't, then I guess it's a solo endeavor.
Yeah, and that's what I did with Dave. That was my first like working collaboration with Dave. Is I asked him to produce and record as I was playing with the band and stuff, and then he handed it off to me, and I went into a B room somewhere for like 3 weeks and finished everything. So it's
What about the songs? I mean, how did you feel about doing your own thing and either holding it up in the light to records that you've done with all these other talented artists, or not holding it up in the light against theirs? Do you sometimes struggle with like, oh, other people are allowed to make incredible records and bold emotional statements, but I'm just pretending when I do it? I'm not trying to put you in that place, but I know I feel that way sometimes, and I think it's a struggle for a lot of people too.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know. I really didn't ever feel like I was I just had I feel like I have a good objective view on, I'm on myself, and like whatever. I'm not going to be selling a ton of records. It's just I just did it really as a personal thing. Like I wanted to do it. I wanted to get it out there. I wanted people to hear it, and if it was great or received at all, fantastic. I really tried to not like compare it to anything or anything. I guess I was, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Did you mix it yourself?
It was a weird hybrid between me and Dave. Like it was fun. It was a fun collaborative thing. So he in a lot of the songs would mix. We'd sort of shifted like this. My recording chops I've been doing for a long time, since I was like 14 with a 4-track, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And first couple Rilo Kiley records and that kind of stuff. But I definitely trusted Dave's chops at that time better than mine. So he got some of the songs I recorded completely on my own at my house and like my basement and stuff, and some live with him, and he got better sounds than I did. And likewise, like set him to task on mixing, and so he would kind of mix the first half of the day with the song, and then give it to me, and I mix this second half on a bunch of them. So that was interesting. Now looking back at that, I've never done that with anybody else. So
that's kind of cool. Yeah. So split up the mix itself. Well, I think that just having some team members involved, where you don't feel like you're by yourself, probably is a huge motivator in putting out your own record.
Yeah. It's yes, absolutely. Because it's your own records, your own songs. It's you playing everything. So you need some objectivity, and you want to throw that in trust to somebody else.
Now, what about accountability? Was that just by collaborating with people? Did you find that there was a way to hold yourself accountable to finishing this thing and actually getting it out?
Yeah. That was all part of that. First being, decisive and like, I'm going to do this and whatever, but also getting through it and bringing people in. It's like, yeah, I'm going to finish this too. So yes.
Look, every studio needs a good vintage mic for that classic warm sound. Whether you're looking for those airy highs, sweet mid-range, or silky low-end, a good vintage mic can put the magic in your mixes. So it's no wonder vintage mics have been loved and praised by thousands of engineers for decades. The JZ Microphone Vintage series are built by hand in Latvia, using only the best electronic components, and feature the patented Golden Drop capsule design for great detail and richness of tone that will bring that classic vintage vibe to your studio and be a real workhorse for your sessions. This time, our friends at JZ Microphones have come up with a special offer only available to you, rock stars. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the vintage series mics V67, V47, and the new V12 at jzmic.com. Adam Audio designs monitors with a mission to bring accuracy, transparency, and high definition to your studio, guiding you each step of the way on your journey from starting out in a home studio to installing your ultimate mixing setup in your pro studio. Check out their complete line of speakers and headphones, from the T-Series to the AX Series to their top-of-the-line S-Series, which all use the unique ART-accelerated ribbon tweeter design, famous for creating smooth, detailed imaging that let your speakers disappear in into your music. Want to feel awesome to make brilliantly accurate creative decisions in your mixes because you can finally hear your music clearly? Your ears are the greatest instrument you have, and if you can hear the music, then you can mix the music. Visit the Atom Audio YouTube channel for lots of cool free interviews, tutorials, masterclasses, and learn how to set up your studio monitors and control room. Just click the link in the show notes of this episode. What about funding? So I know that's going to be a thing for a lot of people too. You don't have to get into details, but
yeah,
was there some element to that where you were like, you know what, I'm going to give myself a budget and just do this, or did you seek out more funds to do a bigger thing? Any memories about that process and whether that's something we should be thinking about at all?
I mean, that's also part of the hybrid approach too. It's like I couldn't afford to just be in a studio, again, not having a studio at that time, aside from my home studio, to do all of it. So it was just, like I did what everybody does these days more than not. It's like I tracked in a big studio for a week and then did the rest on my own. So that made it a lot more affordable. And yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Right on. All right. Well, let's see. What else should we talk about? What have we not talked about yet that we need to talk about? Actually, I do have a question for you. How do you use room mics? I feel like the sound of a space is a real thing in your productions. What does that mean to you? And is, do you like to, I guess this is circling back to something we talked about earlier a little bit, but do you have any comments on making sure that you're hearing the space that you're recording in?
Yeah, I guess I do. I always have. I mean, obviously, there's always room mics up.
Not for us. Nothing's obvious.
Right. I guess you're right. So, let's say fundamentally starting off tracking, and you have the drums, and I have room mics, a huge part of the drum sound by and large, and it really obviously blending to taste. Sometimes you don't want too much room, all this stuff. But I always have room mics up. And in the studio, I not only have room mics, but I have these various, because I have so many EVs, I got all these EVs all over the place as various talkback mics. So if somebody's over on the Hammond, I can just enlist that and, so I can hear people.
But do you tend to bring those in on a recorded track as well?
Yeah. So it just depending, I'll just, let's open that one up and see how that goes. Or beyond drums, which is the most obvious, and let's string, like anything that's in the room. If there's, I do like to have a lot of tracking sessions where everybody's in the same room. So, and if it's a really hunkered down sort of semi-acoustic sort of thing, those room mics, whether they're just the drum mics or they're some other mics placed around, can become an integral part of the feeling of whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if it's just, if they're set up and we're into overdubs and we have a guitar and we're doing a close mic, I'll open up that room mic that's on the furthest one away from that amp, just to see how those go, spread those apart and create a thing. Same thing with whatever instrument, So
what's a typical number of inputs for a session for you? I mean, if you're recording a full band, are you pushing up against 24 inputs or 32 inputs? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'd say for basic tracking, for the most part, it's 24 or less, which is convenient. So I can turn on the 24 track a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And there'll be a lot of that'll be used up on drum mics, and whether or not all those mics are used in the end or not, whatever, but I'll have a good 12 to 14 drum mics going. And a lot of times I won't use them all, and sometimes I'll only go down to use 2 of them, and that's it. That's the whole sound of the drums.
So what's a typical, with the 12 to 14, what might those be? What would you set up for something like that?
Yeah, well, I kind of, at the studio, I have my standard mic setup, and it's even on the website. So you can just for engineers come in and it's like, oh, here's what's here. You can swap it out. You can use it as a head start. You can completely replace it, whatever. So it serves as a great head start. And my studio, I have everything always mic'd up and ready to go. Like the drums are mic'd, and 19 times out of 20 people use that kit. And I have all the keyboards all plugged in and
nice.
Everything, all that kind of stuff. So that standard drum setup is 46 7 fret on the out of a kick, D12 on the inside, 57 on the top of the snare, a Sennheiser 441 on the bottom, 421s on the toms, Mojave Audio MA200s as overheads, these modded Octava MK12s on hat and ride,
Cool.
and AEA N8s for the rooms. And then I always have, like I say, like some fun mics in for
does anybody get freaked out? I mean, not the people, but the mics. Like, do you set up a mic, on the butt of the drummer and compress it like crazy, or any of that kind of stuff?
Yes. Sometimes, yeah. I'll always put like a sneaky little like weird like salt shaker mic in around this corner here. Put something on the floor and compress the hell out of it. Put it against the back wall, like an inch away, pointing at the back thing, and do something weird with it.
What is a salt shaker mic?
There's a bunch of different salt shakers. They just look like a pill. There's this one, Shure 88. It's pressure mic that just looks like a pill with a, whatever. But there's Altec salt shaker mic. There's these various ones. I forget all the different names of them, but
I have a couple of Altecs, and they're like, I think they were like sort of meant to be tube lavalier mics or something like that.
Right. Yeah. And
So
some are harp mics and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it has like a tiny peanut-sized tube inside the microphone.
Ooh, wow. Huh. One peanut.
But it doesn't taste like. I mean, last time I bit into it, it wasn't nearly as good as a peanut.
I think it's arsenic inside those peach bits.
Okay, cool. So it's like, you got your standard drum miking, but then you can just kind of throw in some unusual stuff to see what it does. And then, as a rule of thumb, do you listen to all those mics all together? And is that the way we should approach that kind of setup? Or is it more like, listen to a few here and a few there and then mute them, knowing that they're there if you need them?
It really depends. I mean, again, there's all of us who do this a lot, have kind of your go-to starting points for a generic sense, but sometimes it's you totally, like you're listening to a band, and you're like, I'm going to do a full-on Glyn Johns type of thing with this, or I'm just doing a single mono front mic and that's it. Also, in addition to that standard mic, I always have like a Norman Gaffel UM57 as like a front, or a U47 as a front, just mono mic. And sometimes, like that's the whole foundation of the song, like of the sound. Like it's just this one mic that's 3 feet in front, kind of low set, and everything else is just a supplemental fill-in. Sometimes I've had some that's the entire sound. It's just that one mic.
Yeah.
So if the question is using all of them, a lot of times, yes, I'll listen to them. I'll get my levels and my sounds, and I'll use it or I won't. I'll tuck it in, or I'll use it to taste. I'll compress the shit out of something, or I won't. And I don't use a lot of dynamic compression on drum miking. Actually, I like to keep the dynamics for just about everything except for one or two stylized mics. So
right on. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I've done the thing where I set up the drums and then I'm like, oh, let me add a mic with distortion on the floor. Oh, now I'll add this mic, hanging off the drummer's neck. And then, oh, this one sounds cool. And, you end up trying to like sneak a little bit of everything in, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh shit, this just sounds terrible. It's like,
yeah, it's just like, I don't need that. Like, it's just, it's fun. And it's partially just like a person, like I'm just having fun for a second. Like I want to hear this thing. That sounds awesome. It's cool. It's like, it's totally unusable for the song, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah. But I think it can be a good reminder to us to go ahead and capture it. Just keep it muted, because you never know when you can rebuild a sound out of 3 of the mics you thought you were going to throw away. And now all of a sudden it's really cool, or
completely,
or you go to a breakdown section of the song and then you go to the crappy sounding mic just for that section, and it sounds like this great transition.
Totally agreed. Yeah.
Dig it. All right. Talk about some favorite ways to record acoustic guitar. I think that's a big element in a lot of the record productions you're doing. And they all the acoustics I'm hearing in your discography, they're cool and unique sounding. They don't just sound like a big Nashville country, huge, large diaphragm trying to fill up all the damn space. They sound like they've got cool character and harmonic qualities and stuff. What are some things that you've learned about recording acoustic guitar?
I mean, it really depends on if it's a person playing and singing at the same time. Because in that situation, I usually use just a single mic for the guitar and then the vocals, and they both bleed into each other. So just that is like fantastic. And they inform each other. The sounds, sometimes there'll be so much guitar in a vocal
that becomes the
mic,
sound. Yeah,
that becomes part of the sound and invaluable. You take it away, it's like, oh, I wish it's not. But at the same time, when in that situation, I'm definitely trying to position things so they reject each other, and I do have like independent control. I like to pan them slightly, like more the guitar and the vocals slightly off in the opposite direction.
Interesting if you're doing a vocal guitar thing.
Yeah, because you'll still get that center from the guitar into the vocal mic, but you can pan the guitar a little bit more, not like extreme, but like, I don't know.
And are you panning 30%. The vocal a little off center?
And then panning it a little off center, which then centers the vocal from what you're hearing a little bit. So if you went, 8 to 10% left with a vocal and 25 to 30% right with the guitar, that vocal is probably going to perceive as center.
Right, but it's a little sort of wider.
But it is a little wider. Yeah. So
cool. That's a good trick.
One thing.
Then if you were just like a go-to starting place, you're like, okay, we're going to do an acoustic. I don't know what this is going to be. I guess you're still going to have to decide what kind of mic you want to record with. So you'll have to have some idea. But is there like generally a good starting place for the rock stars to put a mic at a guitar as a place to begin?
Yeah, I mean, one of my go-to mics is an affordable AKG 451 for acoustic. I really like those on it. They're really articulate. They do have a little bit more high-end presence that some people don't like them for. I have ones that I find them really pleasing to me. Mm-hmm. So I use that or a KM84, which are really have a sound. They can be a little noisier depending on how delicate the playing is. But if it's just a guitar and I'm doing it just a single mic, and even if I'm doing it two mics, because often I will do if it's just a guitar, that single mic around the 12th fret, that kind of thing, and then have an LDC on the body, spread out like about a foot, and have those
like more
together.
Towards the bridge.
Yeah, not quite at the sound hole, but somewhere in that realm. If I'm doing two mics, and sometimes a room mic.
And do those two mics need to be similar distance from the guitar, or is the big one sort of further from the guitar and the little guy up close to the 12th fret closer?
I try to keep them similar distance, for phasing issues, and that's kind of the main reason. I like. Right. That said, it's fun when you do get a good phase, but totally different thing. Like have that second mic about 3 feet away, and the one close, and you get that hint of pre-delay on that one, just from time it takes for the stuff to get to the.
Have you ever tried the thing where you take like an Omni lavalier and you just clip it right on into either in the sound hole right behind or just like right at the base, so that you get this ultra detailed finger picking?
I have never done that with an acoustic. I've used the DI and the guitar in conjunction with that sometimes, but rariely. Rarely. But I do that kind of stuff with like upright bass and some other instruments where I'll like squish a small diaphragm into a towel and put it into the bridge of a double bass and that kind of stuff.
Upright bass is a real pain in the ass, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, I have some go-tos that I don't know. I suppose it can be. I don't know.
Have you used any of the Ear Trumpet Lab microphones?
I haven't. No.
I know they make one that's dedicated for upright bass, and Chris Wood from from the Wood Brothers showed up in the studio with one of those things at one point, and it sounded great. But yeah, just sticking something up under the bridge, it's like a trick where you put a rubber band underneath the bridge of the upright bass, I think, and then just pack a microphone in there wrapped in a towel pointing up towards the fingerboard, right?
Yeah, and I've done it like sideways, so it's like perpendicular to, and add it. And usually I've never done with a clip, but I have just with the towel, and it seems to fit. I don't know why it doesn't fall away, but it does. It sticks.
Nice.
And doesn't seem to upset the instrument when people are receptive to it. So I'm like, all right, I'll just keep doing this.
And it was James Taylor. That's who I was trying to think of. Who I've heard used like the lavalier thing all up close in the right where the finger picking is. And it
Maybe
can be inside the sound hole pointing out towards your fingers too, which can sound really cool.
That sounds cool. I guess I just don't have a good lavalier mic.
Dude, I picked up a cheap one on Amazon just to experiment with, and it sounds great. Didn't even get a fancy one. I think it's a question of making sure that you're getting the right tone through the mic pre and compression and stuff like that too.
Yeah, fun tricks.
All right, dig it. As far as doing your record, there was another song, "I'll Be Around," and the note I made about that was just it's just got a very, very steady pocket, very steady groove, and I wondered if you have any thoughts about just the challenges of making sure that your song is steady and true, when you record it, and knowing and feel confident about that.
That's interesting and flattering in this sense, because that's one of the songs on the record that I played everything. I played the drums, I played all the
Way
stuff.
to go.
And that one, as I played it just in my basement, I just played the drums. I didn't have any just like I just have the song in my head and I just played the drums, and then I built everything else on top of that. So that's fun that you said that.
Was you and Beat Detective, or is this just like real deal, just playing?
Just played the song and just knew all my parts, obviously, because my song, and just played the drums and then did everything on top. So
that's cool.
So I don't know how I steady it. That's amazing that you find that song to be steady. That's great.
It just felt right. It just felt just right, and it moved forward confidently. And to me, that means steady. That equals steady, when you just feel like you can relax because the pocket and where everything's landing just feels right.
Well, great. Yeah, I liked making. It was fun making that song. So yeah, that's great.
Tell us more about making that song.
I mean, let's see. I mean, there's that. Again, it was just all just in my little basement. That one I really
to tape.
No. That was just my basement. I think at the time all I had was like Digital Performer, and that was one of my earliest songs. Well, before I did the record, like I had just already kind of like done that song, and so it was like Digital Performer and an interface and big long snake going from my little basement up to my small bedroom converted into a control room.
Yeah, I think Digital Performer was the first interface in DAW that I bought, and then I quickly got Pro Tools Digio 1 right after that.
Yeah, that's what the first one that I got, that me and Blake got to record the first Rilo Kiley stuff back in our home studio back in like whatever, 97, like I said. So yeah, it was like Motu, and it also had a Tascam 688 tape cassette thing, which we did a bunch of tracking on too. But the first foray, I mean, Digital Performer was the first thing that was affordable, and the first thing you could actually, do that in a home environment. Seemed to be that. So
yeah, I've got I still have a 4-track, and I haven't used it in ages, and I totally want to do something. But the thing that pissed me off about my 4-track when I went to go use it again, I was like, it didn't seem to have any way to punch in. I was like, I thought 4-tracks you could punch in. Maybe you couldn't, and I just remembered it wrong. But I thought you could totally punch in and out on a 4-track cassette.
I seem to remember I had like a Porta 01, I think I had, was a Tascam one. And I seem to remember it was like a physical switch, like a little to engage, so
engage.
it wasn't a clean punch, But I think there was I don't know.
Did you verbally say like engage over the intercom every time you listen?
It was definitely responsive to my voice.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. The OWC Envoy Pro Electron is the fastest, toughest, mini-sized, universal, portable USB-C SSD that lets you record from anywhere in the galaxy with confidence. With speeds of up to more than a gigabyte per second real-world performance, the OWC Envoy Pro Electron gives you high-speed audio data for recording and playback. Take your sessions and sample libraries with you anywhere you go. Built for reliability, the OWC Envoy Pro Electron is waterproof, dustproof, and crushproof. Never worry about your storage and the safety of your music again. Find the new OWC Envoy Pro Electron and all your storage needs at macsales.com/rockstars. Song lyrics. Talk a little bit about that. Do you have a process for writing, or am I asking the wrong question since you sort of just did your one record like that? What have you found works well for you for writing lyrics for songs, feeling good about it, feeling like you're in a creative flow?
Yeah, that's a hard one to answer because I'm not super prolific at it.
Did you think we were going to ask you easy questions?
Yeah.
You think you're getting softballs on Recording Studio Rockstars?
Thank you for asking this. This will make me be very introspective. I don't think I've ever come to some good formula for me personally. I mean, I just try to be, it's cliche. I just try to be honest. I don't know. I don't like anything, just any words just for the sake of words. I try to tell some story. I try to not be overt with like any of the imagery. That's just, I don't know. I just try to tell a story as though I'm just kind of writing some down. I don't know if it translates well into lyrics or not. And I don't know. I don't know if I ever succeeded in doing what I tried to do, but that's what I tried to do. It's just,
but I mean, you write it, you like to write it out on paper first and then go sing it? Or do you like to be on a mic and just sort of let the words roll out and see how they fit?
It's more just me and a guitar or me on a piano trying out words. And yeah, if I get to a point where like, oh, this is going good, then I'll have a piece of paper next to me and I'll write it down
So I mean, for me, I know that can be a challenge sometimes because I will quickly lose the melodic idea. But I think, it's different for everybody. So do you find that, if it's written down, you can kind of remember what your intention is and play it and sing it again and just keep revisiting it until you feel good about the whole thing?
Yeah, and luckily there's like voice memo, so that's incredibly helpful. And back in the day, I would always have, one of those tape players, just those little Walkman, and that was my voice memo. So I have stacks of those kind of tapes for, music and stupid ideas and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so
I think that reminds me. So I have some, I've still got some old cassettes. In fact, I have one in the studio that's like a high school Caliphone cassette recorder that's this huge box of a thing, and it doesn't get used because like, how studios are, it's hard for us to use all the stuff that we've got. But I think a good use would be for me to, plant different recorders in different locations of the house and studio so that, wherever I sit down, if I want to record a song idea, I'll just, there's that cassette thing, just record to that,
Yeah, that's cool.
We probably all need to do that more. I mean, the iPhone stuff, recording on the phone is just, it's magnificent. It's awesome. One of the challenges is revisiting those recordings and remembering that you did them,
Yeah. Yeah. Like even just like titling the stupid thing. It's like, all right, this is Route 110 recording. Like, I don't know. It's like, singing into it on the way, but,
nice.
But yeah, it's great. I mean, and sometimes it can sound really cool on those stupid iPhones. Not sorry, iPhones, you're not stupid. But like, if I'm doing sometimes I'm doing a drum beat for something, and I'll put the drum like that on the drums just like, so I can document the beat and playing it back. It's like, oh my God, that's an incredible sound. I wish that's something I would like to in real time, because sometimes I've done it where I've recorded simultaneous the iPhone and blended it in as one of the mics, but you can't do it in real time, because it's.
Let's talk about that. Can you break that down? How you would go about doing that? Because I think that's a really cool idea.
Just
really cool.
Press record on the iPhone and
just stick it somewhere
do your
near
take.
the drums or whatever.
Yeah, stick it. Yeah, like just right there, like on your if it were on your lap without moving, or right on the kick drum on top of it if it didn't fall off. If you put a little non-slip piece of material there, and then importing that and just bringing it into the session and lining it up. It's a cool sound.
And is it lining it up hard to do, or is it pretty easy?
No, just find the transient and line it up. There you go.
Yeah. Shift it a sample this way or that way until it sounds best.
Yeah.
I want to try that. And we used to do that kind of stuff with the micro cassettes and things. Right. Remember that? Yeah. Where it's like, because you could put the little cassette recorder into record pause, and then you'd have to take the headphone jack and go out through a cable, through a DI, and then into your Pro Tools session or to your tape machine. And you could actually capture that track and hear it in real time while the instrument was getting recorded. And it was a great way to record. We did that. We always called it the crapsta mic. But we would do that for acoustic guitars even. You do like a 57 and the little micro cassette side by side, and you get just like a big blasting rock and roll acoustic sound.
Yeah. I mean, in lieu of that, that's why, again, I have this stupidly large mic collection to try to do that with just mics. But yeah, that whole vibe of just like cassettes or anything. It's fun to throw in something weird and strange and unexpected and crappy, and it might be amazing. It might suck, but it might be rad.
That's true. All right. Well, so let's jump to some of our closing questions here. When you started out in recording, what do you feel like was holding you back?
I don't think anything was holding me back.
All right.
I was going forward. Yeah. Like, again, when I started recording, like I said, it was, I think my first attempt at recording was with like a little, what are those long tabletop flat cassette recorders, like
the Panasonic.
Yeah, with like the microphone, if you sing a little too loud, just overloads and turns into like doesn't even record. But just singing, like putting that next to one of your like 7 or 8, putting it next to the speaker and trying to sing on top of this vocalist, and like I guess that was my first multi-track recording.
Oh, that's cool.
But just doing that, Bob Marley and whatever. And
redemption song.
And then for sure. Yeah. That was one of the first songs I learned to play on guitar too. Then 4-track, getting the first 4-track was amazing. And so it was all forward from there. It was just so what do people say when holding them back? What happens?
I don't know, but who cares? What about your 4-track? Did you record the first Rilo Kiley records on 4-track or not?
On the first Rilo Kiley stuff was on 8-track, cassette 8-track.
Cassette 8-track.
Tascam 688. You remember those?
And which records were those? Let me make sure that's in the playlist.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't full records. We just did a number of recordings with them, but some of...
did that stuff make it onto Spotify, you think?
There's a song called Go Ahead off of Takeoffs and Landings that was done on that. I forget specifically aside from that song. I forget all the few songs that there was a song. It was like just a single called About the Moon. Which I think actually did I put that on archives? I don't know, whatever. It's a song. I think that was all on the 688. There's just some stuff. And there was early stuff that we never released, there's just like our form, the first time I did stuff with Jenny and Blake, Blake had a 688. I had one down in San Diego, so I was still living there, and I come up and I recorded them while they were performing on Blake's 688. So that stuff that we never released or anything, but just songs that they had been doing at like coffee shops and stuff.
Right on. Well, Rockstars, I found Go Ahead, and I put that in the Spotify playlist. So if you want to go hear the sound of an 8-track cassette record, you can check that out. And we did a couple of records on 8-track cassette, or at least did one. Warm Milk on the Porch was the album title for our band. But I remember doing it on 8-track cassette, and it was fun. It was felt like a big deal back then,
Yeah,
it was tracks.
It was four more than four.
It was four more than four. It was twice as many, I think.
Yeah. The thing sounded surprisingly good. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. Cool.
How about some of the best advice you received when you were kind of having a career making records?
I mean, all the stupid cliche stuff like don't be afraid to just trust your ears, and you never know what the hell that means, and it is so vague and subjective, but it's true. It's just like what's just makes you happy when you're doing it. What sounds good to you, so that's one of the things that is cliche but totally true. I don't even know if this is a advice, but it's something that I'd say is either, I don't know, just references. Don't be afraid to tinker. I know. Yep. I don't think it's advice that I particularly got, but something I must have. I don't know. But I a lot of early stuff. I would tinker with oh, I have this whole thing. I'm going to try to make this sound like this thing, just in an educational way. And I'm going to make this sound. That's fun. The making space thing, I do think was somebody early on showed me some tips and tricks in EQ, and that was really enlightening. That did show yeah, you just got to make space for a lot of stuff. And not categorically, it's not like you had to EQ every instrument to do that. Not at all, but just know where and how to listen for, how to tinker with EQ. EQ is the strongest tool, I think, in recording.
Do you find that wise use of EQ is often removing a little bit of something?
For sure.
Making space isn't about pushing something harder to fill up more space. It sounds like it's removing something to make space.
Yeah. Certainly there's boosting, and there's certainly, but yes, cutting, early on, exactly. Going into it, you don't really know that the subtractive EQ is such a crucial part. And it's, so that early on for me was definitely enlightening. It's knowing how to find and subtract frequencies that are offensive, and how much that transforms everything you do.
Yeah, subtraction is probably one of the best words in making records.
Yes, and that goes to
production and musical space.
Stripping a song down, throwing a bunch of shit at the wall, or completely down to nothing, or anywhere in between. But yeah.
Does that qualify as a recording tip, hack, or secret sauce, or have you got something else you'd like to share with the rock stars that they can use on their next session?
A recording tip. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that serves as some sort of recording tip. What?
Come on, give us another one. Give us another one. Give us a good one. What's a fun one? What's the one you want to go try next?
I want to put a lavalier mic inside an acoustic guitar.
Have you ever done the thing where you put the 57 down into a 5-gallon water jug?
I have put stuff in I don't know if it was 57. I put stuff in a jug, and I've tried to just mic the room, and I've used it as an actual percussive thing too. And I think that hit the cutting room floor a lot of times. But yeah,
I just thought of something. Here's a new one. We can invent this right now. Is the human filter? So you
swallow.
You take a mic and you stick it. You wrap it in something, stick it somewhere.
Yeah, right.
And then position yourself in front of the drums. Probably put some earmuffs on so you don't have to destroy your hearing.
Yeah, there's a tip. There's a tip. Earplugs. I don't know. Just earplugs a lot of time. You never know when something loud as fuck is going to happen in the studio. What? Yeah. So I always have earplugs if I'm going into the tracking room, and I don't know. Just hearing preservation society. Just having earplugs in a lot of the time when you're in a working environment, and then take them out when you're, behind the board and stuff. But man, there's so many times where some of you be like adjusting an amp and nobody knows you're there, and they're just like, yeah.
Well, I learned this one from Bill Skibby at Key Club Recording, was buy a ton of gun earmuffs, the over your ear gun.
Yep. Got
muffs.
A few, yeah.
And you just hang those by the door so that every time you walk into the studio where it's going to be loud, you just grab a pair and put them on your head and go out there and do stuff and then hang them back up as you come back in. And that's saved my hearing a ton of times.
And it's a good look.
It's a real good look.
Yeah.
I like to also grab a pair of, glowing orange traffic batons so that I can look like I'm out on the tarmac at the same time.
Sure, like semaphore or whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what that is, but it just sounds cool.
Yeah. It's one of the flags, the flag signals. And,
yeah.
Yeah. And like arm position. And I think that some variation of that is what
the original talkback.
Sure. Yeah. Communication over visual distances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, if we could just teach the musicians to read flags.
Right.
It'd be a lot easier.
Isn't that what a conductor does?
Yeah, I think you're right. Howdy, rock stars. Do you feel like the time you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Here are just some of the things that students are saying about the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass. This one comes from David P. Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process I've ever been a part of. And Shane J. says, I've literally watched it 2 times at length, taken a plethora of notes, then combed back over some sections even more. You really knocked it out of the park on this one, and it was so incredibly eye-opening and useful immediately. Look, it's a lot of fun to mix. I'm like you, but it can be really frustrating to keep doing the same things over and over again, but not getting the results that you really want. So when you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go check out ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and get started now using the free preview button where you can immediately watch Craig's ultimate snare mixing trick. Happy mixing, rock stars. How about sharing with the rock stars a tip or a resource for the business side of making records? So if they would like to do this for more than just a hobby, for example, you've managed to play music, put out your record, have fun, but also have multiple studios. You must have something you've learned along the way about doing this, making some smart moves in the business side of things.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's just a slow creep, just like anything. Take your opportunities. Don't worry about any of the. Oh, weird! Sounds like my sound got weird.
Was slow creep? Was that the original name for the Radiohead album?
Yeah,
they're like,
slow.
Hey, listen, guys, just go with creep.
Yeah, there's the slow. Come on, you guys are the turtles. You guys are just creep. Yeah, just don't let anything become an obstacle, like especially in the gear world and all that stuff. Like there's a million expensive things that you could waste a bunch of money on, a lot of functional things that you could really get especially now. As far if that's part of the question of like creating a studio or something. There's so much well-made stuff again, and
you mean you're talking about just collecting the gear? Yeah.
So if from that aspect, don't spend, don't waste your time saving $8,000 for an LA2A or whatever. So whatever, that's probably dumb advice, but it's not dumb advice. It's just, again, cliche advice, but yeah.
It's cool. You're saying it's cool to start with the affordable stuff first. You don't have to worry about having the most expensive stuff.
Yeah. There's so much stuff which is like I have all this cool stuff, whatever. Like I also get things sent to me to mix that's done on just 57s or something. And it's fine. It's fine. It's great. There's so many things you can do. You don't have to worry about everything like that. You can go down that rabbit hole, and it's certainly fun and cool, and it's garners clientele and stuff. But you can definitely make great stuff with just about anything.
Yeah, I mean, one of the records that I was really proud of that we did, the drum mics was a single 57 as an overhead and a 57 on the snare, and then probably the AKG D112 on the kick drum. And it sounded great. I mean, it's easy to assume that you need some sort of condenser mic for your drum overheads, but I guess all you have to do is record with the ribbon and realize, oh, no, you don't. And then record with the dynamic and go, oh, no, you don't.
Yep. Absolutely. Yes. So that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yep. That was it. So how about an organizational tip or resource? How do you want to advise the rock stars to keep their shit together?
In what sense?
Whichever you want. Well, I mean, you got a lot of stuff in the studio. I'll go straight to one that is a recent challenge for me in my new studio design. What do you do with all these microphones? Where do you store them? How do you keep the mics when you're not?
It's interesting. Yeah. It's in that is a recent solution for me. I just got, first of all, I have a lot of mics that are out on the floor. Like I said, I have my 47s always on stands in the various booths. I have all my ribbons, not all, but most of them on stands, vertical. Not that, there's some science to it. You should keep your ribbons vertical for like gravity and
right, because otherwise the ribbon is drooping. Right.
Yeah, and it could take a long, long, long time for that to happen, or it could whatever. Anyway, I have them out. There's also an aesthetic thing. If you go to my spot, you'll see like just everything's out there on display. So it's partly decoration out there too, but it's also just a great way to store it. So I have a lot of microphones on stands, out in the room in functional positions around the drums and in the rooms. But then I recently just got I've got a B room with a dual like 6-foot gear rack. And I kind of gutted that and got a whole bunch of rack drawers of various sizes. And I think I posted on my Instagram a couple of those pictures.
Rack drawers is in, metal 19-inch rack with screw rails.
Yeah.
And then you just get one of those drawers that slides in and out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just lined those with a non-skid thing and put a whole bunch of mics in there for the most part. And then I have a bunch of cases for some mics too, they live in their case. But yeah, the rack drawers was a pretty cool solution for me. And they have locks on them if you wanted to lock it or whatever. So.
Right. Just lock it just so you can lose the key. I hate it when I buy things and it has a little key. I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this key? How am I going to know where this thing is 5 years from now?
I know. Yeah.
All right, cool. So last question. This one is our hypothetical question, and you're going to take this, rewind the Wayback Studio machine, go back, find young Pierre, who's just, he's picking tulips in the fields of Holland, and he's dreaming of one day making records in the studio. And you say, listen, dude, I've come back to give you this bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself? It'd probably be like sell those tulips at the height of tulip mania, because that's probably a good move right there.
Get Yahoo and then sell. This is one of those questions.
Yeah.
That it's also one of those questions. It's like walking into the record store and totally forgetting everything you want to buy.
Right.
So let's see. Go back.
Is it when the bully comes up to you, just punch him right in the face?
Right.
Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Cool. Thanks, man.
I don't know where that came from. I guess I was just going way, way, way back.
I don't know. All my stuff is stupid. It's just like, just keep. I mean, it's just encapsulated in that one Nike slogan. Like it is just, it is. it is truly just like, just do it, like if just keep going, like just keep going. Like it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
you're looking for some secret sauce to success. I don't have it for sure. I just have ambition and a reasonable, objective view on the potential for failure, and embracing all of that and keep trudging forward. Follow it if it's, you're passionate about it. Like you never know what little opportunity or one little thing that you do along the way might serve something else in the future. Say yes to everything unless it's, horribly terrible and offensive to anybody.
Mhm.
Take opportunities that whether they're exactly what you thought they'd be or not. I don't know if that. I think that's just all encompassing in
Yeah, no.
and just going for it.
Just keep going. Just keep going for it.
Keep at. Yeah.
And I think your discography is evidence of that. So Rockstar's a reminder. Click through on the show notes, just scroll down on your phone or click over at the blog post link, which will take you over to the website. And you'll find the discography playlist there on Spotify, also a great YouTube playlist. I mean, Pierre, you've just done a ton of stuff over those by keeping going. So to me, that's the real evidence of it, is just the many, many records. Very cool stuff, dude. Thanks so much for doing Recording Studio Rockstars with us. What a pleasure hanging out with you.
Yeah, man, it was really super fun.
Yeah, and just a shout out too. This will come out much later, but you also did an interview with Matt Boudreau over Working Class Audio, I know, recently. So that might be another fun one to go listen to, Rockstars.
Whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop. And then let everybody know, how can they go find you online? Where would you like them to go check out your studio, your label? If they're going to go listen to your music, what if they just need to come book a studio and make a killer record with you?
Yeah, just 64sound.com and everything, all the links there go to me, the phone, the email, the contact, all that stuff. Just there's no it's easy.
Number
just call
64,
me.
right? Not written out.
Yeah, the number 64 and sound.com. That's the studio. And the various studios, and littlerecordcompany.com. I keep it easy. That's that for that. And then all the bands have their thing, RiloKiley.com, and there's even a Pierre De Reider.com. It's pretty
sweet.
boring.
Well, we'll try and include links to all that stuff in the show notes as well, Rockstars. So, Pierre, thank you so much for hanging with us, man. I look forward to meeting you in person again.
Yes,
and
man,
we got to hit the studio and plug in some Crapsta mics one day.
Yeah, well, if you're in LA, please let me know and swing on by.
You know what? We'll do the first human mic swallow test.
It's swallowing. Okay.
Well, I mean, I just added that level of extreme just now, but wait for me. You and I, we'll make that video. We'll go viral on YouTube, man. It'll be great.
Yeah, it's a word for it for sure.
All right, dude. Thanks so much for hanging with us. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks, Liz. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who have helped make this episode possible. OWC, Atom Audio, Spectra 1964, Isotope, and JZ Microphones. Remember to use the coupon codes ROCK10 at isotope.com/rockstars for 10% off any plugin purchase, or start your extended 30-day free trial subscription to get access to lots of plugins, and Rockstars at jzmic.com for 50% off select vintage series mics for a limited time. And remember to visit the Atom Audio YouTube channel for free interviews and masterclasses, and use the coupon code ROCKSTAR for 10% off any course at Recording Studio Rockstars Academy for a limited time. You'll find links to all these wonderful sponsors in the description of this podcast. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and John Richardson, for additional podcast and video production. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.